Okay, I want to welcome everyone to the March 2024 meeting of the 1904 World's Fair Society. I think you all know that I'm Mike Truax, and this year is the 120th anniversary of the World's Fair. And it also happens to be the 38th anniversary of our society. This is also the second great experiment of combining a hybrid meeting, both in person and Zoom, with videos. And I've gone through a lot of learning and frustrating things over the last month or two trying to make things work. And I realized that I can make things a little bit better. But we tried cleaning things up by having Doug project things. But it turns out that the video feed, especially on videos, goes from my computer out to Zoom to his computer, and we thought it would be a nice smooth display for him to project. Wrong. It's kind of choppy. So for people out in Zoom land, it is a little bit choppy, but we think we've resolved the sound problem because the microphone is on my little camera, and I'm going to put that in front or next to one of the speakers because we have external speakers hooked up so that the people in the room can hear, hopefully loud and clear. And you'll hear the audio too. And I think the audio will come through better than it did last month on the Fort Shaw Indian Girls School basketball team. So with that all said, today our program is about the largest artifact from the 1904 World's Fair, the Wanamaker Organ. We're planning on 3 segments. We'll watch 2 videos about the Wanamaker Organ from the Friends of the Wanamaker Organ. And then we'll have a brief I call it brief by my measurement, a brief program showing rare views of the fair in Oregon that I've been working on. And some of you have seen some of them before on some of my other shows. We also have some attendance prizes. Did anybody not in here not sign up for the attendance prizes? We have 2 DVDs about the Wanamaker Organ. We have a CD of Wanamaker Organ music. And we have 3 of the same handouts, courtesy of Ray Biswanger. And I'll talk about him in just a minute, that he sent us some extra copies of the Wanamaker Organ quarterly newsletter. Did I touch something? I might have. So be sure and sign up for the attendance prizes. Do we have any first-time or new members here, or non-members, or people who haven't come to a meeting in a long time? Okay, I don't see any hands. I want to come. Oh, I saw one hand. Could you just introduce yourself real quick and how you found about the society?
I'm Tony Jenkins, and grew up with my grandpa. He was trained in the so I spent a little
Cool. Excellent. Well, welcome. Glad you're here, and hopefully we'll be able to get through this. I have a big note here for Zoom attendees. If you do have any questions out there in Zoom land, please use the chat window. You can get the chat window with your little controls down on the bottom, or in the little 3 dots that say more. There's a chat window that will come up, and you can type in chat, and Doug will be watching for those. A couple of business announcements. Be sure and visit the Society's upgraded website with calendar and information about our meetings. And I'll go over our upcoming meetings and events here soon. There's also a store that we've worked on to purchase our Society merchandise. And the website also has pictures of past meetings, links to videos of those past meetings that we've recorded, and also the past year bulletins and other reports. And on YouTube, you can see about 20 Society meeting presentations from the last 3 years that we've been recording. This one will be out there soon. It'll be out there for members only with a special link to begin with, and then we'll open it up to the public after a month or so. A little bit of news about Steve Vitale, our former Society librarian. He continues in hospice, and from the last I heard, he's doing well, as can be expected. The doctors aren't optimistic. They know what's going to happen, but he's not in a failing mode yet. Also, Garrett Koch, I think many of you know him from our setups and some of our meetings, is going to be taking over as Society librarian. So I hope all attendees in the room signed up for the attendance prize. That's a reminder to remind you guys. We are recording, I believe. And I would like to set the stage for this presentation. When I joined the society, back in the 90s, I was fascinated that they knew what happened day by day. And the president at the time used to introduce meetings with that. I've continued doing that. The fair will be opening in 6 short weeks. It was a Friday on March 11th, 1904, 120 years ago today. There was an incredible amount of work left to do. For example, Festival Hall was coming along, as you'll see in the PowerPoint presentation. The Ferris wheel was beginning to rise. Some of the palaces were about done, and others had a lot of finishing work still to do. Many of the foreign and state buildings were in varying stages of construction. Exhibits were starting to arrive quickly. Tens of thousands of workers every day swarmed over the fairgrounds, working long shifts. Unfortunately, the weather was mostly cooperating too for the construction effort. A couple of news items. The model ticket office in the transportation building was looking for 7 perfect men to staff the sales office.
There were in 1904.
They would handle ticket sales for the 21 railroad lines centering on St. Louis. Applicants had to be, quote, young and handsome, and, quote, declare their innocence of profanity. A little more entertaining news. Fair officials announced that a big automobile parade would be held at the fair in August. The AAA, American Automobile Association, was going to have an auto run or tour, and they were going to have cars from the big East Coast cities, including New York, Boston, and Baltimore, and more cities were added, drive to St. Louis. It was part of their good roads effort to improve roads and let governments know that we need good roads between cities. Because back then, trains were how to get between cities if you had to go more than 20 miles and you didn't know the roads, and the roads weren't marked, and you had to go a couple miles on Farmer Jones's dirt road and turn right at the big oak tree. Easy to get lost. The drivers and cars would all arrive in St. Louis on the same day and then parade to the fairgrounds and drive around the fair. And that really happened. So that's a good one. I'm sure you've seen pictures of the auto parade, at least the society people have. And now it's time for the presentation. After the presentation, be sure and stay for the attendance prize drawings and the overview of upcoming meetings and events. So I want to talk a little bit about the organ, and it's hard for me to talk about the organ without talking a little bit about Ray Biswanger, who is online, and I think I need to change the share to my full screen. And I'll go view. Ray, you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you, and I'll tell you if you missed anything.
Hi, Mike, and thank you for inviting me. I'm the executive director of the Friends of the Wanamaker Organ in Philadelphia. I've been interested in the organ since I was about 15 or 16, maybe before that. And when it started to run into some issues, we founded a society about 1991 or 2 to see how we could help the store, and that work continues today. We started doing concerts, and then we began fundraising for, and then actually running a restoration shop to bring the organ back to its fullest potential.
Well, I've learned about that. The society is a member of the Friends of the Wanamaker Organ, and we receive their monthly newsletter, and I'll show you some of those in just a few minutes here, or after the presentation. I found out lots more about the organ and Ray. It's an international organization. They work with the organ shop that you'll hear about in the videos, the people upstairs doing the restoration and fine tuning. The organ is a National Historic Landmark now. It's valued in excess of $79 million. In 2019, a major project to refinish and restore the facade of the organ to its original appearance was completed. Much of it is in 24 karat gold leaf. And I'll also tell you about the book that Ray did after or in between the videos. And I know that Ray will take a few questions and he'll help me with the PowerPoint program. So having talked about all that, I want to now start a screen share of the first video, which paused, and we'll get back to the beginning. I thought I had this queued up, but apparently didn't during my testing. And we'll go full screen and play.
The Wanamaker organ is the pinnacle of organs. It's the largest playing musical instrument in the world.
Just the sound of the organ was probably the biggest surprise to me. Like, it just wraps around you.
The sound goes everywhere, and that's like really fantastic.
When they hear the organ playing, they're walking through and they're stopped and just stunned because, you know, they're shopping at a department store and yet here's this organ playing.
This room is really the gathering place of Philadelphia. There's nothing like it in the city, and other cities don't have rooms like this.
Back in 1911, when the store was open, this was the way of entertaining shoppers and guests.
People who travel not just the city to come hear this instrument, or the state or the country, but really from countries all over the world, and it really is the best of the best.
There's nothing like it on the face of the earth.
My name is Matthew Taft. I am the organ shop coordinator here at Macy's Center City, Philadelphia. Coordinating the organ shop is a job that involves many hats. I get to work on the largest musical instrument in the world, and also on all of the annual events that happen around this instrument. The main core of what is now the Wanamaker organ was built for the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair. That was about 10,000 pipes, and at the time was the largest instrument in the world. And Rodman Wanamaker convinced his father, John Wanamaker, to put it in his flagship store in Philadelphia for when it opened in 1911. The largest organ in the world at the time wasn't large enough for the space, so it was expanded throughout the late 20s, and there was an organ factory here in the Wanamaker building, and they built more pipe organ and installed it and took over retail space to make it organ chambers, and this instrument grew and grew and grew, and it really has a strong foothold in the history of music. We don't have the Wanamaker department store anymore, but we do still have the Wanamaker building, and Macy's is a tenant in the building and an amazing steward of this instrument.
My name is Dylan David Shaw. I am from South Philadelphia. I got into organ music when I was very young, 3 or 4 years old, and my grandfather used to bring me here every year to the Wanamaker Organ Day to hear Peter Richard Conti, the grand court organist, play, and that's what inspired me to become an organist. It's really quite an honor and a privilege to be able to play here in this magnificent space and play this magnificent organ. This is basically your control center for the organ. No sound comes out of here. All of the sound comes from all the 28,750 pipes that are in the back.
This instrument is so grand because it has the acoustical capability of creating the sound of 2 and almost 3 full symphony orchestras just at the control of your fingertips and your feet.
All of these colored tabs on the side are your sounds, so like your flutes, your oboes, your English horns, your clarinets, French horns, cellos, violins, tubas, trumpets. It's all controlled here.
We have one pipe for every possible note on a keyboard for that one set of pipes. So we've got a little leather valve that gets pulled out of the way for pressurized air to go up through one single pipe to make one note happen. It's usually hundreds or thousands of pipes at a time, so there's all of these things that need to happen simultaneously and instantly. We have tens of thousands of pipes that need upkeep for the mechanical parts that make them sound. So there's a team of volunteers and nonprofit employees as part of the Friends of the Wanamaker Organ, and this nonprofit is pivotal in the restoration and maintenance of this instrument.
My name's Ray Biswanger. I'm the Executive Director of the Friends of the Wanamaker Organ. My organization is really a musical arts society that helps take care of this instrument. Not only do we present special concerts, but we have a team of restorers who help take care of this gigantic musical instrument and its many needs and repair situations. Gradually, we worked into this wonderful relationship with Macy's, where we take this load of caring for the world's largest playing pipe organ off the shoulders of people who are trying to establish their retail careers. People are fascinated by it. The crowd seemed to be double as large. People are over at our kiosk watching our visitor film. This room is really the gathering place of Philadelphia. There's nothing like it in the city. It's special and unique, and people recognize that right away.
I heard about the organs doing research for my holiday, and I just wanted to listen to them, and yeah, I'm really glad I came.
I was raised Catholic and went to the church often, and I really love the sound of the organ, and that's what I love about the music. And the music's really it makes me feel good and just gives me goosebumps.
I'm a retired Navy chaplain, so heard a lot of organs over the years. They call it the king of instruments, and once again, it's easy to be convinced of that.
It's really a place of magic where people can just walk in and discover this amazing music, or come in for a tradition that they've had for generations.
The thing about this organ with the visitors is we'll get letters from people who were here 20 years ago, and they remember every last thing that happened, what was played, how the organ sounded. It's like the memory goes into some kind of hyper-oxygenated overdrive, and it burns in a memory that people treasure their whole lives.
Macy's is proud to use this twice a day, Monday through Saturday, for 12 concerts a week. They're about 30 to 45 minutes each, and they're completely free. We also have other programming that happens after hours throughout the year, so you can have a private orchestra organ concert.
If John Wanamaker were here today, I hope he would say, keep up the good work. And then he would say, get back to work.
Okay, so stop the share. And can't, missed it. There's another organ video apparently that follows this one, and we're not going to watch that right now. I'm going to take a minute or two, and I don't want to end the meeting. How do I get back to the screen share or the camera? Zoom meeting. Okay, I guess if I talk, I think I'll come up here. Okay, I had the camera turned around for the sound, and I forgot that I was over here. I want to show you a couple things about the Friends of the Wanamaker Organ. One is we have attendance prizes, a couple sets, 2 or 3 sets of the Stentor, their magazine. And Ray Biswanger and I have been online every once in a while. He's learned, I think, a little bit more about the Wanamaker Organ in 1904 from some pictures and stuff we've done. And I've learned a lot more with what he's done, and you'll see some of that during the PowerPoint. And he has taken some of those pictures and put them in here and featured Festival Hall and the 1904 World's Fair, and discovered some things that we're going to show you in the PowerPoint. I think I maybe mentioned that he's also the author of a book. When was this published, Ray? I forgot. 1990.
In 99.
Yep. Music in the Marketplace. Well, it's okay. You're right. Was it reversed on yours?
Good on mine.
Okay, well, I know how to fix that.
It looks okay to me.
So-
Don't worry about it.
Oh, you-
Well, we can see it here.
I know where that is. Some things I can fix. Okay. Now it says music in the marketplace. The story of the Philadelphia's historic Wanamaker organ, and one of the classic pictures of the organ and the eagle below it. And this thing is close to 200 pages. It has extensive endnotes and footnotes, researched, and just a lot of neat pictures and the story of how it was put together. And you're going to see more about that in just a little bit, and some pictures of Festival Hall. This is still available out there on Amazon.com if you're interested in getting one. It's a very good historic book. And Ray's going to tell us more about that when we get to the PowerPoint presentation. But I thought I'd take this opportunity to kind of go in between and fill a few minutes. So now I'm going to go back to the videos and screen share, and click over here to the second one and go back to the beginning. And am I on track so far, Doug? There's a couple things in chat I see, but I'm going to start this and then go full screen.
Meet me in St. Louis, Louis, meet me at the fair. Don't tell me the lights are shining any place but there. We will dance a hoochie coochie. I will be your tootsie wootsie if you will meet me in St. Louis, Louis, meet me at the fair.
Hello, I'm Michael Barone of Pipe Dreams. What would it be like to go back in time to 1904 and the World's Fair, giving us a chance to hear the world's most famous organists play on the St. Louis Exposition organ? That's the same pipe organ that forms the nucleus of the huge Wanamaker organ in Philadelphia today. Frederick R. Weber shared boyhood memories with the Organ Historical Society in 1959, and these are the words of his reminiscence. Among the most famous organs of America was that of the Louisiana Purchase Exposition, held in St. Louis, Missouri in 1904. This magnificent organ of 5 manuals and 138 voices is quite unknown to the present generation, probably because of its rather brief life of but a few months. It stood in Festival Hall, and its glistening white facade was 70 feet wide, 30 feet deep, and 50 feet high. 80 of the world's most eminent organists presented daily recitals upon it during the summer of 1904. The exposition marked the high point of all World's Fairs, but it was the only time that an organ formed the architectural focal point of a vast composition of buildings. 2 square miles of space on what was then the western rim of St. Louis were required to accommodate the architectural grandeur, which has never been equaled. Visualize, if such a thing is possible, a series of great lagoons and sparkling cascades of water surrounded by scores of snow-white buildings in the florid Parisian boulevard-esque style of those days. Some of these buildings were more than a quarter of a mile long. At the end of the main access stood Festival Hall, a circular building done in the grand style, surmounted by a dome of utmost exuberance. It stood on a crescent-shaped hill, and before it a series of waterfalls descended into the lagoons. Stairways of monumental scale swept in graceful curves to Festival Hall, and these approaches were adorned with lavish balustrades and a profusion of groups of statuary. Our country's most famous architects had collaborated in making it the most stupendous architectural composition in the world, and to outdo the Columbian Exposition of the previous decade. It was stage carpentry, done in the grand style, but of the 19 million visitors of that memorable summer, few paused to consider the fact that all of this magnificence was stage carpentry. Even to the sparkling cascades before the Festival Hall, all was wooden framework and lath and white stucco, even the great gobs of faultless architectural detail. On a platform within the lofty circular hall stood Dr. George Ashdown Audsley's masterpiece. Dr. Audsley, as every organ enthusiast knows, was a Scottish architect who'd lived for a time in London before coming to America. He was a perfectionist in regard to excellent materials and exquisite craftsmanship, and his knowledge of the organ, its tonal appointments, and its construction was so extensive that he would have rewritten the entire Encyclopedia Britannica and devoted every page of it to the organ. The large organ in Festival Hall was the realization of a lifelong dream and was built according to his design by the Los Angeles Art Organ Company. Dr. Audsley had an able staff of associates. One of these was Murray M. Harris, an admirer of organ builder Hilborn Roosevelt, and a member of the firm of Fletcher and Harris, who had built the 5-manual 57-rank organ for Stanford University, also the First Methodist Church and B'nai B'rith, and other notable organs in Los Angeles and elsewhere. Another assistant was William B. Fleming, who had started as a Boston carpenter, but who had been trained in organ building by Charles S. and William B. Haskell. Thomas Ross, a skilled pipe maker, and Frederick Bolton, a voicer, are worthy of mention, and by all means John W. Whiteley, who had helped William Tyne design and voice his remarkable imitative string tones, and Edward L. Crome, an experienced organ man, deserves being included. It's difficult for people of the present generation to know the background of those days. Few of the 13 million people who paid 50 cents to enter the exposition grounds and 6 million more who had complimentary tickets had ever seen anything other than a church organ of 2 manuals and 12 or 16 stops. Very few concert organs existed in America at that time, and some of these were of tonal designs that differed little from that of a church organ, except that they contained more pipes. The world's most famous concert organ of that period, built by a celebrated English firm, followed the beaten path of commonplace tonal appointments and limited flexibility. The endless stream of visitors who entered Festival Hall knew little and cared less about Dr. Audsley's revolutionary ideas. To them, the enormous organ was just another sight to be included in their rounds. They gaped at the 160 horseless carriages on exhibit. They smiled in derision at Mr. DeForest's wireless telegraph. They tramped as many of the 45 miles of 25-foot-wide balustraded pavements as their strength permitted, and then, sweltering in the Missouri heat, they sought rest in Festival Hall to hear Alexander Guillemot or Clarence Eddy or S. Archer Gibson or Clarence Dickinson put the organ through its paces. Dr. Audsley's views were set forth in a series of articles published in 1887 and 88 in The English Mechanic and World of Science. He thought in terms of tonal families rather than in terms of individual voices. He described diapason families of various pitches and tonal textures, Gemshorn families, string families, flute families, chorus reeds, imitative reeds, and orchestral color galore. No rank was allowed to stand alone. A 32-foot diapason or a string called for a 16 or a 10 2/3 or 8 or 5 1/3, a 4, a 3 1/5, a 2 2/3, a 2-foot, and one or more mixtures. Dr. Audsley's scheme called for neither foundational organs nor organs that were all top work. His idea of an organ was that of a carefully balanced instrument with a wealth of tonal resources from 64-foot pitch to the most acute mixture, and always with an abundance of bottom, middle, and top. And then, among other things, he demanded utmost flexibility and multiple expression. The festival organ had all of these things. The swell organ alone was capable of 17,179,869,183 distinct tonal combinations, an unlimited expressive opportunity. The great organ contained 26 stops, 12 of which were under expression. It included stops of the 32-foot harmonic series and separate families of stops in the 16 and 8-foot harmonic series as well. Couplers, pistons, and double-touch system allowing more stops to be heard when the keys were depressed extra hard provided additional resources. The swell organ had 34 stops, was enclosed in 2 swell boxes. In its first division were stops of the woodwind character, flutes, piccolo, clarinets, oboe, corno di bassetto, fagotto, and contrafagotto, as well as stops of the horn and viol family with several open flutes. The second division of the swell organ contained 11 imitative string voices at 8-foot pitches. With its compound expressive resources, it was estimated that a different combination could be drawn every minute, night and day, and it would require 32,000 years to exhaust all possible combinations. The choir organ contained 19 stops of refined accompanimental character, and, like the great and the swell divisions, it was tonally structured, with quiet voices at 4-foot pitches plus a 6-rank mixture, this division entirely under expression. The echo division contained 12 stops of delicate voicing and was also entirely expressive. The remarkable pedal organ included 26 complete ranks of pipes, 4 borrowed ranks, and a 6-rank mixture. The organ contained, in addition to its 138 speaking stops, 36 couplers and 46 pistons. There were 7 swell shoes. The main organ had 5 bellows, each 6 by 12 foot in size, and each with 3 feeders. The echo organ had 4-foot 3-inch by 12-foot bellows with 3 feeders. The main organ had 2 10-horsepower motors, and the echo organ a 1.5-horsepower motor. The wind chests contained 20,000 feet of wood, the bellows and the regulators 8,000 feet, and the wind trunks 2,000 feet. The framing was 3 inches by 12 inches of select California sugar pine, of which 7,000 feet were required, and the wood pipes contained 35,000 feet of the same material. The organ filled 12 of the largest sized furniture cars. To hear the organ, one boarded the Olive Street trolley in downtown St. Louis and rode 4 miles to Kings Highway. Just beyond Forest Park stood the Exposition with all of its 1,576 buildings. The largest were arranged along either side of a spacious lagoon, and at the far end and crowning the entire group stood the circular festival hall with its great white dome. A series of waterfalls before it sparkled in the summer sunlight and then tumbled into the artificial lake, which was rectangular and almost a mile long. Ascending one of the 2 curved stairways which skirted the cascades, one reached the arched doorway of the music hall. Entering it, one saw a great circular auditorium at one end of which was the organ. It contained 3 rectangular flats, each comprising 20 or so display pipes. The lower part of the case rose to a height of about 12 feet. Above this were 4 paneled pilasters, each of which was about 5 feet wide. Next came an ornate cornice, in the center of which rose a tall triangular cresting terminating in a lyre supported by 2 figures, the muse of sacred music and the muse of concert music. And as one sits and admires this beautiful casework, unaware that the organ is not one of normal size, a door the size of a postage stamp opens under the left-hand flat, and a man the size of the first joint of one's finger appears. Here is a lesson in scale, not musical scale, not pipe scale, but architectural scale. Architectural scale is adjusted to the module of the human figure. If a man appears to be of normal height when standing before a building, then the building is of normal scale. But if he looks like one's finger, then the scale is monumental. Keeping this in mind, one realizes that the festival hall organ is not one of average size. Its largest display pipe is not 6, but nearly 18 inches in diameter and 36 feet in length. As a schoolboy, the writer haunted Festival Hall during the summer of 1904, charmed by the sweet music so soft that only the keenest ears could detect it, and awed by a flood of melody that sounded like a chorus of giants singing. The Festival Hall organ did not go to the Kansas City Convention Hall when the exposition closed, as was originally intended. It lay in storage for a time, and then was shipped to Philadelphia, where Mr. John Wanamaker rebuilt it, and together with Mr. Rodman Wanamaker, enlarged it to 6 manuals, 451 stops, and 28,750 pipes. It is hoped that this famous organ may be allowed to stand in its present location in the Grand Court of the Wanamaker Department Store in Philadelphia as a monument to Dr. G. A. Owdsley and the tonal qualities that he advocated. In a day when most organs contained unrelated stops, nearly all of 8-foot pitch, this organ taught its valuable lesson of voices at 6 or 7 pitches, plus mixtures. It taught the lesson of tonal texture and variety of color at a time when a dulciana, a solitional, and a viol all sounded alike. It impressed upon the men of those times the value of expression and multiple expression, to say nothing of the use of the finest materials and highly skilled craftsmanship. May its mighty pipes never be reduced to the dimensions of lemonade straws. Those were the reminiscences of Frederick R. Weber, who shared his boyhood memories with the Organ Historical Society back in 1959. Weber's captivation with this pipe organ, furthered by the willingness of organ builder William B. Fleming to answer his endless questions, led to a lifelong interest in the King of Instruments. Weber became a Lutheran minister and wrote books on architecture, art, and church liturgy, and he was a founder of the Organ Historical Society. Reportedly, his vast knowledge of organ historical information far overshadowed all others, and his papers are preserved at the OHS archive in Villanova, Pennsylvania. The Wanamaker organ, as the St. Louis Exposition organ eventually became, continues to play today and is a daily feature in the Grand Court of Macy's department store in Center City, Philadelphia. I hope you've enjoyed this musical time travel adventure to the St. Louis Fair of years ago. Do be sure to check out Pipe Dreams, which is broadcast on many public radio stations around the country, or is available 24/7 online at pipedreams.org. I hope you'll find it entertaining too. I'm Michael Barone. Thank you for listening.
In church sat a man near the door. Asleep he was starting to snore. The minister rose and he said, "We will close singing meet on the beautiful shore." The man in the back then awoke. He caught the last words that he spoke. He said, "Parson White, you can meet me all right, but the beautiful shore is a joke. Meet me in St. Louis, Louis, meet me at the fair. Don't tell me the lights are shining any place but there. I'll be waiting at the station for the whole darn congregation. So meet me in St. Louis, Louis, meet me at the fair."
I've heard that song before.
My first guest is a good friend, I still think. He was rooting for me on the mic.
Okay. We'll maybe come back to that later. I'm going to stop the screen share. That should bring me back to here, and I'll grab the camera this time, because we're going to chat just for a minute or two while I get into PowerPoint. I learned a couple of things along the way of this, one of which is not in the PowerPoint. I learned, and Ray, you're listening in, I'm sure, the whole organ and the side consoles are on a rotating track. The side consoles, I think, kind of pivot open so you can get in and out of the chair, which is kind of a cockpit built for two, with all of those controls and the 6 keyboards and stuff like that. And when I learned that, and Ray, you probably have this number at the tip of your hand or tip of your brain. How much does the console weigh?
They say it weighs 2.5 tons. It's more than just the big box with the stop tabs and the keyboard. So there's a whole platform underneath it where there's a lot of wind machinery and things like that. It's raised up to the height of the railing of the Grand Court, the marble railing, and it turned so that back in the day they could follow the orchestra when they were playing. The conductor, who was Leopold Stokowski in those days, the Philadelphia Orchestra. Today we use a closed circuit TV to do the same thing, but you can turn it and hear the organ a little bit better too.
Ah, well, that's one of the amazing things I've learned over the course of the last month or two working with Ray. Ray, we'll jump into our PowerPoint.
Sure.
Okay. And we'll go full screen. Full screen, there it goes. Maybe. And I got to change the PowerPoint override in the preview mode here. You just duplicate what everyone else is seeing. And I'll hide those zoom controls too. Put this down in the corner. So as this progressed along, working with Ray, I wanted to tell the story of some real unusual things. And in case there's any people from the Wanamaker Organ side, I thought something that I don't get to do with you all very often is show you just some of the things that you may not remember all the time about all the different World's Fairs there were. And Philadelphia did have its own World's Fair, of course, back in 1876. We all know about David Rowland Francis, who wanted to get the 1893 World's Fair. It went to Chicago instead, and he was governor at the time, Secretary of the Interior, and then he spent several years politicking and fundraising to make sure that we got the Louisiana Purchase Exposition World's Fair. And that purchase of that territory doubled the size of the United States. Historians back in 1904 thought that was the second most important event in American history. And later on, he owned a lot of land down in Southwest City, and he donated 60 acres to the city that became Francis Park. And several years ago, the Friends of Francis Park had Harry Wright, is that right? Harry Weber sculpt a statue of David R. Francis that now stands in Francis Park, and we've seen that before. So how many people here think the fair was in Francis Park, period? Nobody raising their hand? You all know better than that, huh? Well, there's Forest Park in the city of St. Louis. And we'll zoom in on Francis Park in the green shaded area, and the streets are labeled and some of the major landmarks are labeled, and those labels will not move. And now we're going to take a quick look at a cropped picture of the World's Fair with North at the top. So it looks a little strange because usually North is at the bottom with the main entrance at the bottom. So this points out where the Ferris wheel was in the center of the fairgrounds, and the art museum, and the Muni wasn't in the fairgrounds. The birdcage was, of course, and Washington University. So we'll go back to today's map and take that little cropped map and put it right over where it belongs. And you'll see that only about half of the fair was in Forest Park. The other half was in leased land from Washington University. The Pike was a late leasing in 1903, and that's where the Pike ended up, of course. And the Philippine Reservation and a couple of the large palaces were out in the green areas out there. They had a big construction challenge, though, once they chose Forest Park, which was kind of the obvious choice for it. One was the River de Pere went through the park, and you can kind of see, this is not a real good map, but you can kind of see a squiggly line that squiggles under the Grand Basin, comes over here, and there's a big lake over here that was called Post-Dispatch Lake at the time. The entryway into the fairgrounds was basically in the bottom of the picture, and it went all through where all the palaces were. Well, you couldn't have a river, and what are you going to do with it? Well, they decided they were going to harness it. And so they figured out a path around those buildings, the blue dotted line, with a couple of 90-degree turns. And they figured out that 3 14-foot chambers side by side would be enough to handle any thunderstorm and drainage and not end up with a flood at the fair. And they constructed nearly a 1-mile long channel of these 3 14-foot channels around the palaces in 5 months. Early 1902, that was the first contract they signed, and start taking the trees down. and start leveling the land. This picture shows what happened about 10 years after the fair. They had a flood, sure enough, and the History Museum down in the lower left center here was kind of on an island. And they figured we better do a better job building it. And this shows the path along Lindell where the concrete channels for the River des Peres are today, and still there. But they had to get going with construction. This is probably a early 1903 photo. You can see two or three palaces in the background that are near complete. You're standing on the roof of the Palace of Liberal Arts, and you can see two palaces, Varied Industries and Manufacturers, are just getting underway. And by the way, if you remember that blue dotted line, that's this freeway that goes around the palaces right here. That's the 45 or 48-foot wide chambers that hold the River des Peres. So now we're going to go to Festival Hall and see how it was constructed. You can see the two restaurants, the pavilions on the end, the colonnade of states and the cascades. And most of you know, because we discovered from something that Ray brought me to, an engineering booklet, that all of these cascades were elevated off the ground on pylons and piers. All of the pools, all of the fountains had underground piping to pump the water through. They were not at ground level, and I kind of was astounded when I learned that. This was the goal, to build Festival Hall, a nice round 200-foot diameter building with a 200-foot dome, and it had a back chambers. This is the second floor where it has the stage, the organ space, or maybe this is the first floor, Ray. Dressing room.
First floor.
Okay.
And the hall is, the larger circle is the terrace around it.
Right, you can see the double columns that are marked, and then stairs going down, and the walkway that went all the way around Festival Hall. Offices, and down below were toilets and stuff like that. And the balcony that went all the way around too. How many people know about the balcony in Festival Hall? Not too many people. We're going to look at the balcony after we build Festival Hall. November 20th, 1903, right around Thanksgiving. The fair is only about 5 months away, and they're starting to build the walls of Festival Hall. You can see the rectangular part on the left. Lots and lots of lumber. Christmas time. Festival Hall lower part has been built, and the barrel to support the dome is there. And this structure here is where the cascades are going to flow from. Very ornate staff sculptures on it too. And on my sculpture presentation, we'll talk about that. A view from the rear you don't often see, but you can definitely see the rectangular part with lots of framework on it under construction. This is the curved part of a colonnade where there will be a statue placed in front representing one of the states or territories. About 5 weeks later, the dome is practically done. You can see the skylights in the dome, a lot of lumber and scaffolding still around it to finish off the columns. And let's go back to that rear view and take a look. This is on the Public Library's website, and it's got tremendous visual detail in it. But I showed this to Ray about, I don't know, 6 months, a year ago. And Ray is the kind of guy that just likes to look at every little detail. And he said, you know, Mike, down in the lower left corner down here, they might be doing something associated with the organ. Ray, you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, I don't have your nice pointer, but if you look in the center a little bit to the left, you might see a horse. Does anyone see that?
Yeah.
And next to the right of that horse, there might be another horse's head. It looks like there's a couple ears, a little bit up right in there, perhaps.
Yep.
And there's appears to be a wagon in there somewhere. Looks like the horses are turned around and resting, and somebody's taking in a large crate. This doesn't show the big doors at the center of the back of the hall, but they're clearly headed that way. And it's the same time they were loading parts of the organ in that could very well have been crated. Whether it's the organ or not, you get an idea of how they got things from the train down to the site using teams of horses and things of that nature.
And that's all right down here that we just saw. And there's what appears to be a double door dark behind this little construction tool shed or something like that. I don't know how they got the 16 or 32 foot pipes through that door, but that's another challenge.
Well, I mean, they're long but skinny. I looked at it today. They hadn't framed the door. It was just a big hole waiting to be finished.
Right. The other thing on this picture that astounded me was looking up around the dome here, and at the public library website, you can see a whole lot more detail than this even. Over here on the right, you can see some cherubs and they're holding little trumpets. That's just amazing. There's a couple other pictures that show ladders up here with workers climbing around, putting gilt on some of this work, staff work that's up here. And this is one of my favorite pictures. How many people can see the workmen on their lunch break? Down here in the lower left. Just hanging out on the edge of Festival Hall. Now this is February 28th, 2 months before opening day. The statue is not on yet. This skylight is open. I just found this picture, enthralling, and you can scroll around it and just see detail that's remarkable. So here's what it looked like when it was complete and the lagoon full and the fountains turned on. Here's a colorized black and white photo from one of the souvenir books. Here's a photo blown up to show you the Cascades, that if you think of the festival hall in front of the art museum, that probably took up half of Art Hill, including the plaza where the statue is, and take up half of Art Hill level, and then the Cascades being on what's left of Art Hill to go down. And look at the people climbing the ramps and the stairways going up the side of that. Just amazing. Have to have a little, one or two other pictures of construction. This is taken from Washington University roof, probably looking down Lindell towards where the fair is going to be. You can't see much detail here, but there is a lot of construction going on in the center part far away. This is the walkway that goes down. That's Lindell Road, and then Skinker across left and right. And then in a couple of months or another year or so, it would look like that. Okay, let's get back to the organ, though. That's the topic for tonight. Ray, I'll click whenever you say, but I'll let you talk about these pictures.
Well, the one on the left is in the Wanamaker store, but if you look at the left edge, you'll see like a power panel, and that was used at the fair. Very fancy cabinet, and also moved to the Wanamaker store, and that's how they would turn on the power and for the magnets and I guess the blowers, and monitor the voltages. And the right is a picture of them erecting the organ case. The nature of the scaffolding always impresses me in that it's not exactly how OSHA would want it done today, but it worked for them. And so this is an insight into how it was all done and what working conditions were like at the time. And this is what we call the pony pipe. It's a Shetland pony in the largest pipe, which is about a yard high and 32 feet long, and you can see the mouth of it there. And it's probably a baby Shetland pony, but they knew how to stage a publicity stunt just like we do today. And this is a picture of the organ case. It says the Los Angeles Art Organ Company with an orchestra there, and you can see the console kind of in the center there with the cursor. People asked about those banners, and someone did detective work for me, and they're Masonic banners with the Pythagorean theorem on them, Euclid's proposition number such and such or something. And there's yet another picture that has the famous French organist Alexandre Guillemot there. I don't know if you can zoom into that or not, but he's at the console, and the automatic player console is right under the case, right there. The company, the Los Angeles Art Organ Company, knew that the real money in pipe organs was in selling them to millionaires as toys, kind of. They would put them in their mansions, and of course, most millionaires didn't know how to play the organ and didn't always want to have an organist for their parties. Some did. So they would have these roles, like a player piano, and play them. And you could sit on a bench and pull out the stops and kind of play with the expression, make it louder or softer, and enjoy yourself. This got them into trouble with another company for a patent infringement, and was part of the near undoing of the Los Angeles Art Organ Company. There were 3 lawsuits filed to prevent the player from being used at the fair, and also they had to remove some of the organs they had sold to wealthy people like the Wrigleys and Dohenys in Los Angeles because of these patent issues. Their innovation was to have 2 roles play at the same time. One would do the melody and the other would do the accompaniment, which was something, as far as I know, their competitor, the Aeolian Company, which really controlled the market, did not have.
Ray, I'm going to interject a question here or request. One of the most recent issues of the Stentor had 4 or 5 pages about the organ, and we all maybe have heard some of the reports of the organ shaking some of the plaster off the ceiling or breaking a glass or something later on. And it turns out when the organ was first played early on, it was somewhat of a disappointment and not very loud, and maybe all the pipes weren't installed yet or whatever. Ray, can you give us a quick summary of that?
Yeah, they weren't finished with it either. I mean, they ran into some real financial problems in Los Angeles, and the mining mogul who bought the company as a retirement investment kept having to bail out the company, and the lawsuit didn't help. And so they kept shipping parts of the organ all through the summer, and it really wasn't probably finished until sometime in October when Guillemot was there. So it would have sounded soft and kind of worked its way up. Also, maybe they added some sound reflection or things like that. As far as the plaster coming down, well, the building wasn't built to permanent standards. It said that when the glass fell down, it wasn't during a concert. The plaster was during a concert and nearly caused a panic, but Professor Guillemot from Paris kept playing and restored calm. Somebody may have been fooling around with the organ. Let's see what happens if we put our arm down on the keyboard and hold down all the pedals. I don't know. That can cause a ruckus. Who knows? But some glass did fall down on another occasion, but when nobody was in there, as far as I remember.
Okay. We'll go on to the next slide.
Yeah, this is a composite I made. It's really a mirror image of 2 photos with the balcony kind of drawn in and the orchestra kind of picture. It's just a number of pictures put together to kind of give an impression and try and figure out what the hall looked like. The outside of the hall was designed by Cass Gilbert, famous for the Woolworth Building and the Supreme Court of the United States. And the interior was done by Masqueray. Is that how you pronounce his name?
I think so.
Who did a lot of the architecture work for the fair. We've discovered that the arch over the organ, as you saw in the other pictures, wasn't a complete arch, but apparently the roof of the organ interrupted that, and there was a flat area. So it was kind of draw a line across there. So, but anyway, you can see how the organ played in the fair, but it had to into the hall, but it had to go a good 60 feet to get out, and there were wings, and the Weber said it sounded like a chorus of giants singing. Other people talked about the overpowering echo of the hall, which you get when you have a dome. If you ever played around in a dome building, like stomp your feet in the middle of it or something, they have funny acoustic properties. And this is another thing I kind of made to try and figure everything out based on some plans that were in a magazine from the time. And again, doing the mirror image thing. This is what the scaffolding looked like for the dome. And it rested on 4 beams that were on the 4 piers of the arches. And you can see where the skylight is. It's not clear how light got down into the hall from those big windows on the dome. And there were big windows all around the perimeter. And probably many of those windows were open during the summer because it must have been unbearably hot. And having the dome probably helped keep the building somewhat cool because all the heat would just rise.
Well, all good things must come to an end, and the fair did close. The Chicago House Wrecking Company had been around. They had salvaged other fairs, including Buffalo and Chicago. They supplied and operated the Ferris wheels, so they knew almost everything that went into the fair. They paid the Louisiana Purchase Exposition Company $450,000 to salvage all the palaces that weren't already spoken, the states, the foreign countries, the pike, the intramural railroad, and the cars were already sold to local trolley car companies. They had a force of 2,000 people. They knew how to do it. They had 2 fire departments to cover things in case they happen, and most of the salvage was shipped directly to purchasers. So can anybody guess what the first building that was turned over to the wrecking company for teardown that didn't have any exhibits in it other than an organ? Once they got the organ out of there, it was time to start taking Festival Hall down. The left-hand side would have been the rear where the rectangular part was, and once that organ was out, they took that down and the dome came down. A little bit later, probably in early 1905, Festival Hall's dome is completely gone. And you can see the colonnade is starting to come down, weeds growing in where the Grand Basin was. It's kind of sad. The Palace of Transportation, maybe in middle of 1905, the roof is gone. Lumber strewn all over the place, cash and carry. 1 million board feet of lumber, 10,000 railroad cars of staff, some of which was recycled. 22 railroad cars full of barrels of used nails. They pulled nails out of the wood and filled up barrels. Copper wire, some was on the original spools unused because all those electric lights had to be powered through copper wire. Windows, light bulbs, boilers, furnaces, dynamos. There's a catalog about the size of a National Geographic. And oh, did I mention the Ferris wheel? Did I mention lumber? Did I mention fencing, railroad track, iron pipe, office furniture, locks, hinges, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? All of that was for sale. And sell it they did. Early 1906, the Ferris wheel cars are taken down and probably sold off pretty quickly. They could be disassembled. The glass was sold apparently to an individual up in Wisconsin, almost in Michigan. And there's one facade of the Palace of Machinery left here. And if you look real close between the Ferris wheel and the edge of the picture on the horizon, you can see the Palace of Art, otherwise known as today's Art Museum. Right here, just above the trees. And this little building here is at the end of the life-saving lake. So what happened to the wheel? I got to cover that a little bit. Could it stay there? No. WashU didn't want another amusement park right on their doorstep, and the contract said they got to restore the park, and the wheel was in the park. Nobody wanted to pay the upfront cost to take it down and move it somewhere else. They estimated back then that there was some $77,000 worth of scrap metal in there, and the axle was worth over $1,000, which is about $30,000 today. So what was the only alternative? Blowing it up. That was the easy way to get to all the metal rather than build a tower and disassembling it piece by piece. They had the torches that could cut most of this metal up, and they did. They put it on a train car and, you know, shipped it off for salvage. But what about the axle? Well, 10 years ago, the strong urban legend was it was buried somewhere because it was too heavy to move, right? Well, it had been moved a few times before. How did they move it? Well, the train tracks were still there in 06. They hadn't taken those away because they were salvaging all that metal and all that staff. It wasn't newsworthy, and their records say, we're not going to sell any of this stuff cheap. We're not even going to sell the axle cheap because torches will get better and we'll eventually be able to cut it up. It was 45 feet long. That's probably close to the length of this room, I'm guessing. And 32 inches in diameter, which is a pretty good size thing, 70 tons. But even with that, the wrecking company disassembled the wheel in Chicago, brought it all down here, and put together the 100,000 pieces so that we could have the Ferris wheel. They could take it apart again and they could move it back to Chicago. I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the one other prominent thing that was at the fair that is now in Wanamaker's in Philadelphia, and that's the eagle. At the fair, it was part of the German exhibit in the Palace of Varied Industries, and now it's in the Grand Court. It was designed by a French sculptor, Auguste Gall. It contained 5,000 bronze feathers, each hand assembled by German craftsmen. And it weighed 2,500 pounds. And the Grand Court floor had to be reinforced to support this. Ray, I don't.
Well, actually,
go ahead.
We got that from a news clipping that had an ambiguous phrasing. I think what they really did was they placed it over one of the girders. Because you can go in the parking garage now underneath. They put a parking garage in and you can actually look up, and there's no unusual framing, but they just wanted it over a beam. So,
an urban legend.
Another urban legend.
Ray, about how tall is the base in the eagle?
The eagle is 3 meters high, 1 meter wide, and 2 meters long.
9 feet tall.
Yeah, it's all in meters, but yeah.
Sure. So, and it inspired the motto for Wanamakers that you could go shopping and all go in different directions as long as you meet me at the Eagle.
Yeah, that's still a thing.
So after the World's Fair and before Festival Hall came down and stuff, they loaded it up on 13 freight cars to ship off to Philadelphia. And here's John Wanamaker's building that was finished about 1901 or something like that. I think you told me, Ray.
It started around 1900, 1901. They built it in sections because there was a store called the Grand Depot there. And the first piece that was built would be the one that's right in front of you, from the middle of those column doors on the left to the column doors on the right. A big chunk of building was put there, and then they built the all the way down to the left, and then they put the third part on at the end. Gall, by the way, even though his last name is Gall, he was German, the sculptor of the eagle. It was built for the German, as you say, the German people, German imperial eagle.
Well, I found this picture on the Friends website that shows an outline of where the grand court is, and the little pieces that stick out are where the organ was placed in the grand court with its 5 arches on each side. And it's almost a third of the building, maybe only about 28 or 30% in length. And Ray was telling me a fancy artist did a 3D picture of the various levels of that grand court, about 7 stories tall. And when we zoom in here, you can see where the organ facade is on the right, the organ keyboard in the middle above the middle arch here, and the eagle down on the ground.
Yeah, the eagle's actually forward. It would be by that second column. Yeah, about where those people are standing, and you can see how the beam would go underneath.
Oh,
So,
sure. And you can see some of the pipes and stuff put in here for illustrative purposes, I guess. And
yeah, the Daily News did that, and they said we could use it, which was very nice of them. Philadelphia Daily News.
Ray, I'll let you talk to these numbers.
Well, at the fair, it had 10,059 pipes. It was the largest organ in the world, and keyboard had, there were 5 of the manual keyboards, meaning ones that use the hand, and there's a 6th keyboard, the pedal, played by the feet, 32 notes. Then the Wanamakers found it was inadequate in the store, and they wanted to retain the original quality, so they started enlarging it in a factory in the store with some of the original people, including William Boone Fleming, the designer. And by 1922, it had about 18,000 pipes and a new console to control that. And Mr. Wanamaker's son, Robin, wanted to keep expanding it. They had these concerts with the Philadelphia Orchestra that drew huge numbers of people, 15,000, some of them. And they brought over some famous European organists that drew 5,000 people, large crowds. It was really a phenomenal time in music, and he just wanted to keep going. And so by the time he was done, it had 28,482 pipes and a new console. Rodman died in 1928. He didn't get to hear any of that, which was very sad. And it had 461 ranks or sets of pipes on 6 manual keyboards. We've since added 3 more stops, bringing it up to the current total of 28,750 pipes.
I'm just amazed at those numbers and, you know, the effort that it took to put that together. I'm amazed by looking at this up close, at all the different stops that can be selected. One of the keyboards is kind of hidden by the overhead light. The foot pedals are not shown very well in this view, but just knowing by color which one to hit, you know, to get the exact tonal quality you want, because the combination of the different keyboards that select all of these different stops control, as we saw in the videos, each one of those pipes differently.
Yeah, if we go back, Mike, to the console, the organ is really a series of organs. Each keyboard has its own home organ. The bottom's the choir, then the grate, the swell, the solo, the ethereal, and the top was meant for the stentor division, which was never put in. We use it as a utility division now, but they use color coding to keep these separate organs straight. And there are 4 floating divisions: the string, the echo, the orchestral, and now we have the vox humana chorus. And so to keep all that straight, and to know what plays together, they use the color coding. The choir at the lower right is kind of a gray color. Then you have the blue of the orchestral. That's a floating division. The white for the grate. Then the coppery colors, the ethereal, the fifth keyboard. The echo, which floats on any keyboard, is yellow. The stentor organ is red. And then over at the left bottom, we have the pedal, the swell, and the huge string organ, which is really unique and a terrific experiment in reproducing a whole string orchestra in organ pipes. Nothing like it has ever been attempted or equals it. And then you'll see a lot of controls. Some of them have one color on top and one on the bottom. And if you're coupling the yellow to the white keyboard, would be yellow on top and white on the bottom. That's an easy way to find your way around. It still takes a lot of familiarity, but without that, you'd just be looking at a whole bunch of white tablets, and it would be horrible. So we have the Technicolor solution to that. Somebody's put a question in there. Are you monitoring the chat room, Mike?
Yeah, hang on a second.
Doug's reading right now.
Does the organ have some unusual sounds like a theater organ has steamboat whistle, trolley bells, etc.? If so, what are some of the unusual sounds?
Well, it wasn't made to accompany silent movies, but we have what we call percussion stops, including these giant tower chimes, the largest of which is about 12 feet long, and they're at the top of the court. They sound like cathedral bells. We have smaller chimes. We have a celesta. We have Chinese gongs, different sounds. It's not meant to be a theater organ. It's more meant to be a symphony orchestra with real organ combined, a concert organ, if you will. So things that would be used in an orchestra are what is the aim, rather than the kind of exaggerated effect of the theater organ.
So another question was, are all the colored keys original or replaced from time to time?
They broke out the Vox-Humana choir from the orchestral, the blue. You can't see it in this picture, but then they put some green tabs in for that and made it float independently. But almost everything is original.
And another question was, how many stops are on both sides of the organ console?
Something like 754 or something. I could open my booklet, but you can go on wanamakerorgan.com and get the lowdown.
Yeah, I was wondering how many organists are capable of playing that to its fullest?
I don't know if you heard, did you get that okay, Ray?
Yeah, well, there's a real learning curve. When we have guest organists in, the ones that do best are the veteran performers who go all over the world and make the best use of their time, because it's in a department store and you practice either late at night or first thing in the morning, and maybe during the daily concerts. But you really need to hit the ground running and make fast decisions, and the veterans seem to do the best at that, or the ones that play it every day. The house organist, Peter Richard Conti, or his assistants, many of which are from the Curtis Institute of Music. A lot of the stops are much quieter than you would imagine them to be, and you have to put them on in masses to get good effects. Some of them are very powerful, but the organ was kind of underbuilt for the building, which is why they enlarged it. And it's also part of its charm because it creates these soft textures, different tone colors, we call them, accompaniments that are very smooth and mellow, and you can build the organ up and down without hearing the jump from lesser to more stops. So it's almost completely unique in that regard, and that's one of the reasons people regard it as so beautiful.
Another question?
Yeah.
If you speak up, this is the microphone.
I was just wondering if they have like a tool to reach, because those are so far up away from where the person would be seating. seated? And then also considering it's historic, if they changed a tab, do they sell those? Do they put those somewhere where people can buy them?
Well, the question is, can you reach it? Most people can reach up to the top. There was a diminutive woman who was the house organist for decades, who the story goes would use a rolled up newspaper to reach some of the things. And the second question, part of that question was, about it being historic and changing things.
Yeah.
They have made some minor changes in the arrangement of things over the years, but essentially it's the way it's always been. There were some stop tablets that didn't do anything, like that red band you see that was the standard organ that never went in, and they were able to take some of the solo voices and break them out from their divisions and put them up there so that you don't have to not use a whole division to play a trumpet or something like that. You can break out the trumpet separately and still use the rest of the division. That's called borrowing. So that makes the organ much more versatile. Also, some stops for the stentor pedal, the lower left black things were never put in, and they've been repurposed in an intelligent way. And some of the percussion, the orange things, were never put in. It has it's not a slavish presentation of the way it always is, but a practical one that's respective of its history.
Go ahead.
When the organist pushes a key, is it a mechanical linkage to the pipe or is it a solenoid? Is it electric?
Yeah, it's what we call electro-pneumatic. You couldn't have what you're talking about mechanical, that's a tracker organ, and you can't have the console so far away from everything and the organ all over the place. Dr. Audsley, you remember him from the film, he was the one that saw the advantages of electric action to the organ. Essentially, you telegraph your wishes through wires, and then you work some pneumatic devices with little valves opened by electromagnets that admit air into the different pipes and stops.
What kind of air compressor do you have to generate the air?
We have 8 blowers. The largest one, I think, is 40 horsepower. It's quite a piece of machinery.
Well, speaking of machinery, Ray, I have a question for you. Over the past 10, 15 years, there have been a lot of restoration and maintenance projects as the original wood structure has aged or cracked and the leather has gotten brittle and needed replacing, the supports for the pipes, etc. At any given time, there were, I think, always efforts going on to make things better, keep them from getting worse, etc., and restoring as best you can. On average, over the last, I don't know, 10 or 12 years or so, how many people were working in the back shop in the organ factory to just improve it, make it better, etc.?
We've had as many as 5 or 6 or 7 on the staff. We're moving more to a vendor model now, but we've made enormous strides and are closing in on getting very near to the point where it will all be done, and then like the fabled bridge, we start all over again. So painting the bridge.
Dan has a question.
Go ahead.
Ray, how many possible piston settings are there? And as most organists knows, some of the pipes are fake. So how many pipes are fake on the organ? And the last question I have is, we know a lot about the Ferris wheel, but we don't know how the organ and how many people got the organ into Festival Hall and out of Festival Hall to put it back on that train. Because, you know, horses, but do you have any history on getting the organ in, getting it out, and the retuning process of the organ and the repair and maintenance and the Wanamaker?
Or can we take those one at a time?
Yes, the first one was about the pistons.
Yeah, we have pistons. There's what are called local pistons that control things that are one color, and there's general pistons that control everything. Now we have multiple layers of pistons, and you can set level 121, and often they do that for a single piece, and they have something called a sequencer where you can press any button multiple times and it'll move to the next piston, so that you don't have to, do gymnastics to get up to piston number 49. You just push in one of certain pistons again while you're playing, and it moves to the next combination. So it's almost an unlimited number of piston combinations.
You had a question about how many people did it take to get all the stuff into Festival Hall and put it together, take it apart and get it out of Festival Hall in December?
Yes, and the other question was, how many pipes of this current organ are fake? Because every
Oh,
organ
okay.
are fake.
Okay, I don't know how many people set up the organ and took it down. At other World's Fairs, they've hired local people to help. I'm sure there were local organ companies that it might have made sense for them to hire to do this work, but I don't know. As for the organ case, has all dummy pipes in it. They're architectural. I'm not sure how many there are. We have a film on gilding the pipes. You can see them all laid out in the Greek Hall at the store. A lot of the casework at the fair is speaking pipes. There were some dummy pipes put in for symmetry, but the architectural case is ornamental and serves an important point for people to look at when the organ's played.
Okay, let's take one more question. We have to do a attendance prize drawing, and Ray, your question?
Since the organ has historic designation, is its future secure if Macy's would have to close due to economic conditions? What would happen to the organ?
Well, that's why we organize. As with anything, people have to care about something and love it, and it means a huge deal to people in our city, and we've got that going for us. Over the course of centuries, buildings and institutions change purposes and evolve over time, and it always requires that people care and love things. For a plaque alone just won't do it. It helps, but being organized is always a much stronger position.
Okay, if we have time at the end, we'll take a few more questions, but I want to, just see what else is ahead of me here. I'm going to skip over the legacies of the fair, and I'm going to skip over of course, the Wanamaker Organ is one of the big legacies of the fair, and I had some special pictures of the fair. So with that said, I'm going to stop the share so I can get to the camera here. And we have neither of these books, but we have 3 sets of the and Nan, would you mind bringing up the I did bring them up, never mind. We have 3 sets of 2 copies of the bulletins, newsletters. We have 2 DVDs, similar in a way, I think, to what we've just seen about the St. Louis World's Fair. And these are available on the Friends of the Wanamaker website. One is the Curator's Tour. And the other one is the Wanamaker or around the Wanamaker Organ in 80 minutes. And I've seen these before and they are quite informative. I think a little more in depth than what we've seen. We also have the Wanamaker Organ Video Yearbook from 2020 available, a CD. So with that said, Doug, my able assistant here, is going to begin drawing names. And if you would come up and maybe stand against the wall over there so we can get pictures of everybody.
Jim Bloom of London.
Go ahead, draw another name.
Bob Meek. Bosby. How many more?
4 more. Come and first one, pick what you want and walk over there and I'm not telling you what to pick, but
Ray Steiner. Blank. Everybody wins.
this isn't open.
Oh. Look underneath your chairs. Beth Anderson.
Two more, Doug.
Slacking off.
Slacking off.
Sandy Meek. Wow. Boy, got Buzz and Sandy both.
One more.
Sue Steiner. Boy, we got the Steiners and the Meeks are covered.
Okay. Yeah. Sherry, you want to direct the photo? No, they're not the same thing.
Yeah, they are.
Oh, are they?
What's left?
Are these the same? Well, they weren't supposed to be.
Well, that's just trying to eat.
Okay. Okay, if you all squeeze together for Sheriff for a photo op.
Yes, they are.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yay. Okay, I'm gonna finish up here. First, I want to have a big round of applause for Ray Biswanger, who has provided us insight and spent 30 years with the organizations working with the Wanamaker Organ and helping to produce, direct, et cetera, be editor-in-chief for the newsletter, fundraiser, and probably the go-to guy for anything about the Wanamaker Organ. I also want to give you a heads up on some upcoming meetings real quick here at the end. Be sure and check your emails, the bulletin, and the website for more details. April is the anniversary month of the opening of the fair, so there's some very special events. On Monday, April 8th at 5:30, the History Museum is going to provide a very special event for society members. We will be one of the very first public groups to get to see the new World's Fair exhibit as a group. There's a sign-up list in back. It's not binding, but they want to have an idea. Are we going to have 30 people there or 40 or 50 or how many? Because they're going to provide some light refreshments and they want to have something of a head count. We'd appreciate if you'd sign up on the list and we'll make sure it gets to the person who is taking the list at the History Museum. It'll be an after-work meeting, and I think I said, yeah, light refreshments and then a visit and tour of the new exhibit. And if there's 40 or 50 people, I don't know what they're gonna do, if they'll break us up into groups or what. The 8th of April, Monday, Eclipse Day. It's 5:30 is when the refreshment starts. The tour will probably start a little after 6 and go till 7 or so. Okay, later that same week on Thursday, April 11th, there will be another special event at the History Museum between 5 and 8 p.m. And Patrick Murphy is going to debut his new book, Prelude to a Century. This is a coffee table size book, 192 pages, I think, all about the fair, and has a lot of information. I worked a lot with Patrick on content and factual accuracy and expanding what he was writing about here and there with some additional details. And I made sure that he had the words about the axle correct. But while you can buy the book either now or in the gift shop or at that debut, I urge you to wait until April 30th. I'm going to jump ahead to April 30th and talk about that. At about 5:30, we're going to have our special opening day celebration. We're planning on the first ever non-banquet dinner meeting at Pietro's restaurant. It'll be pay as you go, ordering off a special menu, and a copy of the menu will be in the next bulletin. Pietro's is on Watson Road near Chippewa and not too far from Ted Drew's, just a little bit further to the south on this same road that you probably used to get here. Dinner and more details will be in the bulletin. There'll be a short presentation by the author about his new book, and book sales and autographs will follow, and the books will be sold at a discount. The current retail at the History Museum is $42. The current retail at Amazon is $42. And we will offer about a 25% discount to $30 at that banquet. And we may charge you a couple bucks for a fee if you use a credit card. A credit card fee.
Oh.
Because we have to pay that fee. And we're paying right at that price that I just quoted you. At that event will be the only time we're selling them for $30. If we have some left over, the price is going to go up, not to 42, but a little bit higher. I also want to talk about the opening weekend of the new exhibit, April 27th and 28th. History Museum is going to open their new World's Fair exhibit to the public. The Society has been invited to set up, probably on the north lawn, which has not yet been planted or sodded yet. I think the sidewalks are done. I drove past it a few days ago. We'll be able to set up in tents like we do at Art in the Park, which is not going to happen this year, by the way. We will be able to sell some merchandise and tell them about the fair and recruit members. So if you want to avoid the big crowds and the line that'll probably stretch outside the main doors to see the new exhibit, come to the Society's sneak preview on April 8th. Everybody's nodding their head. You can sign up to volunteer for that, and I will contact you later if you're willing to help on opening day weekend. We'll probably have 2 shifts of people on each day, one before 1 a.m. or 1 p.m. Starting at about 10 to 1 or 1:30, and then the other one to start from about 1 to 5. And there will be big crowds, and we'll be able to recruit and tell people about the fair and have all sorts of fun. Yes, what am I forgetting, Nan? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. There will be email blasts. There will be inserts in the bulletin and news in the bulletin about this. And there's a sign-up list on the desk. If you...
Can you hold on for a few minutes? Okay.
What was that, Reba?
Hi, Reba.
Oh, Mike, how can we sign up if we're on Zoom for the 8th? Is what I wanted to know.
Yes, you can sign up with the museum or myself or even Doug is what the bulletin said.
Yes.
We're all taking
She's asking about the 8th, yeah,
for the
History Museum.
For the 8th at the History Museum, yes.
Okay.
It is,
Okay.
it is very desirable, so they know how many people are coming and they'll prepare a name tag for you.
All right, thanks.
The 8's our preview at the History Museum, and it's on Zoom.
Oh, will we Zoom that presentation? No, that's not a presentation. That is just a meeting, a stand around stand around refreshments, light refreshments. They'll talk at us for probably 10 minutes or so and then take us into the exhibit where we'll get to see what's going on. I don't plan on having anyone with a portable video camera taping that or anything. I don't know that they'd like that very much. We will not be Zooming that, and we will not be Zooming the opening weekend. And I'm not planning on Zooming our dinner meeting and short presentation about the new book either. So this will be it for Zooming and meetings and stuff like that. And finally, if you're on your calendars and taking notes, our annual society picnic will be Saturday, May 18th at Kirkwood Park's Campbell Pavilion, where we had it last year. And at this point, it's almost 1:45 and we got to start breaking down. Ray, I want to thank you with one more round of applause from everybody.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I can't hear you, but I trust you. It's very kind of everyone.
You added a whole lot to our meeting, and thank you very much, Ray. And
Well, thank you. My pleasure.
with that, I'm going to start breaking stuff down. I kind of hope to have a few minutes. I do want to tell you, if you want to learn more about the organ, Google Friends of the Wanamaker Organ. They have a great website and there's some links. You can go to YouTube and type in Wanamaker Organ and listen to lots of videos from the Wanamaker Organ. The Friends have a great store that they sell CDs and DVDs. If you wanted one of those DVDs, you can get it at the Friends store. And if you want to see what is my personal favorite video, and I think I've shown this to people at meetings before, there was a flash mob at the noontime 30-minute concert back in 2010 that 650 chorus and choir members had rehearsed. And this was, I think, October something or other, kind of before the Christmas season. And this is really kind of an Easter song, I guess. And he led the prelude, and all of a sudden, 650 people started singing Handel's Hallelujah Chorus. And watching the video of people going, why are they all singing? Should I be singing? Wow, this is really cool. I'm at a concert that they filled that hall with sound. And Ray, were you there for that?
Yeah, it was the Opera Company of Philadelphia. So,
yes.
And they just blended in with everybody else. We knew it was coming, of course, and they had cameras all over the place. We filmed a separate version. You want to watch the one that has like 12 million people looked at it on YouTube, but.
How loud was it and how much did they fill the Grand Court?
Well, they had people there. They had like a makeup day and people were, sitting in chairs with the brushes and there were other things going on, and everybody else, just all the opera people kind of infiltrated it. They had done it once before at the Reading Terminal Market where they started into an opera.
Oh.
But the fun was watching the people react. And
yes.
And it's funny, I happened to go to a number of different churches during that period, and it came up in sermons where people would talk about how this really kind of was a spirit-filled event for many people.
Well, I think it was really probably different for the singers too, that normally when you're in a choir or whatever, or chorus, you're standing there and all performing to people and you're just kind of still and staid. When you're wandering around and in your regular daily clothes and you're singing, you're raising your hands and people are watching you and you're just performing for the little bunch of people around you. It's must have been a fun-filled event. But with that, I'm getting it's about time to pack up and close because it's going to take us 10 or 15 minutes to get out of here. But thank you all for coming. Thank you to the 25 or 30 people on Zoom.
Thank you.
And thank you all.
Thank you. Bye now.
Goodbye, I'm ending the meeting.
Very good.